can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. 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 I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. 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 I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. All is well. All is well. I can rest. And all is well. All is well. I can rest. I am safe. And all is well. I can rest. I am safe.
Welcome. It is so good to be here with you. This is the third Masterclass series. This is the third day of this Masterclass series. Started on Monday with Gabor Mate and another Masterclass that I put in there. Yesterday, we had Dr. Dick Schwartz with parts work and a second Masterclass. And so today, this is our Masterclass for today. And I have just been enjoying reading your comments and your insights in the platform, your aha moments. And I've been moved by the courage that you've had to show up and be authentic. Actually share some of your fears, some of your struggles, some of your challenges. It's been wonderful to see that level of authenticity already showing up. And in fact, let me show you into that platform just in case you have missed any of it. And what we will do is we will have the short Q&A time at the end. So as you go through, you can just listen for now. And I will share with you, this is what we've covered. We've been in here. We are on day 3 right now. We covered day 1. And this was on the emotional roots of autoimmunity. We had Gabor Mate on day 1. And actually, you know what? Share in the chat. Who was able to watch this specific masterclass with Gabor Mate? Let's see who was able to watch that. Yeah, I see some raising of hands. And then we had the before the diagnosis, how to actually detect autoimmunity early. We want to be detecting that early. And as I come in here, I am, again, just inspired by the comments that you have left before the diagnosis, how to detect autoimmunity early. And look at these comments. Wow. Susan says, wow, both the discussion with Gabor and your presentation were so enlightening. So much resonates. Thank you for this. This was absolutely eye-opening. This class was awesome. Thank you, Annette. And as we come down to day 2, though, there was some good comments happening here. So again, let's get that chat open. The more that you engage with me in the chat, the better I teach. How's that? So let's look at day 2. Who was able to watch day 2 in this meeting the parts that protect and persist? This was such a great masterclass. And I know that this resonated with many of you because of the comments. Yeah. Help me understand. So insightful, helpful, very interesting. And then we looked at the other masterclass that I had on day 2 on the connection with fatigue. How many here have had fatigue as part of your journey? Type yes into the chat if that has been part of your journey at all. Yes, fatigue is actually one of the most common symptoms of autoimmunity, which is why I included this masterclass on that. Attachment, fatigue, and autoimmunity. And the connection between those. How to identify the freeze response. Even through our physical posture, I brought in some attachment, why insecure attachment leads to autoimmunity. Karen says, very helpful. Thanks so much for addressing this. I think another term used a lot in the past might fit the freeze response as well. Burnout. Absolutely, Karen. Burnout. Being so exhausted, you are unable to care. And that's actually where I want to start with you today, because that was where my story with autoimmunity started. Yes, I discovered my own autoimmunity, and it is what woke me up. What happened for me was that I was so busy taking care of everyone else that I lost myself in the process. I was doing very good things like many of you. In fact, one of the things that I had done that led to my body finally saying no more was that I had foster parented and then adopted. This is Miguel. This was still when he was a foster child. I had not yet adopted him. We were in the process. And he came to me when he was 4 years old. I had just finished my master's in biochemistry. I had a few months. I wanted to make a difference in the world. And I said, why don't I foster parent? And as things unfolded and I learned more of his past, I saw more of his challenges and the trauma that he still brought with him. He was going to have a very hard life if he stayed in the foster care system. And so I decided to adopt. In the process, though, I burned out. I gave everything to everyone else. During the day, I was a medical student, spending my days in the hospital, in the clinic, learning all of this information, learning how to diagnose and see patterns and to treat. And then I would come home and I would be faced with chaos, dysregulation, tension, I would go to bed late, wake up early, trying to just keep up with my responsibilities. Who here can relate to that? Type me in the chat if this has been part of your story. Just trying to keep up with responsibilities, pushing the edges of what we need for sleep, compromising on what we know is healthy, on what we know we need to do to be taking care of ourselves. But we lose ourselves. And this is actually a big part of autoimmunity and the emotional roots behind autoimmunity. If you have been able to recognize some of those emotional roots and these traits, these tendencies, these patterns behind autoimmunity, go ahead and type that in the chat. Just say patterns. If you've already been able to recognize some of these patterns that I'm describing, this losing ourselves in taking care of other people, losing ourselves in the busyness of life, losing ourselves in our responsibilities, and we just push through. For me, that looked like pushing through so hard and for so long that I was completely unaware of the mess that was happening inside of my body. And eventually, my body had to give me the clear message that we can't do this anymore. And it was one morning in 2014. Maybe many of you will be able to relate to this experience that I will describe. One morning in 2014, my body said, no more. And it could not get out of bed. The fatigue was so bone deep. It's not that I couldn't move. I wasn't paralyzed. I could move my hand, my arms, my legs, but I did not have the energy to actually get out of bed. And that had never happened before. I'd always been able to find a way to push through. And it was a scary moment for me. My world started to crumble because what I'd always done to get through was no longer working. I didn't know how to live life any other way. And as I moved my hand. I remember I moved my hand from where it was on my chest, and I moved it down over my belly. And at that time, I was not well. I did not look like a picture of health. I was 30 pounds overweight. I was on 2 mood medications, Zoloft and Wellbutrin, for trying to manage anxiety and depression that had been building over the years. But once again, my default had been to mask it in order to push through. Just keep going. That's how we survive. Just keep going. And so this morning in 2014 was a big change for me. And I realized that I had to learn how to live life differently if I wanted my life back. Was my life worth fighting for? Did I deserve to have a better life? These were all questions that I would need to ask myself. Am I going to settle for this is the rest of my life? Or am I going to decide I do want something different, something better? I deserve something better. I should invest in something better. It would take me on a long journey, though, because one of the aspects of autoimmunity that many of you know by now is how connected it is with adverse childhood experiences. I'm so curious, how many here already know the connection between autoimmunity and ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences? Go ahead and type ACE into the chat. ACE, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Many of you, I can see in the chat, know this connection already between autoimmunity and adverse childhood experiences. And in fact, if you have done that score, go ahead and type that into the chat that you've done your score. You can just type score. You don't need to remember your score. You can just type score if you've actually looked at what is your personal connection with autoimmunity and adverse childhood experiences. I can see in the chat that some of you have remembered your score. Well, here's an interesting thing for you then. For all of those who know this connection, for all of those who have even done this score, here was what confused me completely. I did not have an ACE score. I looked back at my childhood and I was like, I don't have trauma. And if I don't have trauma, if I don't have an ACE score, why would I have developed autoimmunity? I'm curious if there's people here who have autoimmunity and they don't see trauma in their childhood. They don't have an ACE score like me. I'm seeing there's several here as well that you're in the same position I was. And so I was left scratching my head. Why? As a physician, this is what I ask all the time. Why? As a scientist, biochemist, I ask that question all the time. Why? Help me understand. And this was the big change for me. Because as a physician, I was used to having the answers. That was my job. My job was to find the answers, diagnose you, prescribe your medication, and send you out the door. I'll jokingly say that all in 15 minutes for those of you who've had those experiences in the conventional medical system of you've only got 15 minutes. That was my job. My job was to understand why and then know how to diagnose and how to prescribe. And so here I am, and I am not in the physician's seat right now. I am in the patient seat, and I don't have an answer why. I don't know why I have developed autoimmunity. And it would take me on a journey that has led me to what I do now. And even being able to write a book on the biology of trauma that will help those of you here, even those, and I would say especially those who don't think that you've had trauma. You don't see trauma in your past or in your childhood. You don't know why the autoimmunity then, if you know that connection. And the book lays that out. It lays out the understanding of the body and the nervous system and why we can think that we don't have trauma, and yet we have a biology of trauma. That is the title of my book, The Biology of Trauma. And Gabor Mate wrote the foreword to my book, and this has been so incredibly helpful for me. Gabor has been very meaningful in my own personal journey and helped me understand why my body said no. And so as I look at what we're going to be covering today, this is a key aspect of that. A famous quote by Gabor Mate is, "It's not what happened to you. It's what happened inside of you." And this is what I was missing. I was looking for the big bad event that had happened to me, and I didn't see it. I didn't see trauma, but I hadn't been looking at what had happened inside of me during my childhood that set my biology up to have autoimmunity. And so for me, this moment when I'm looking down at the test results, and for the first time, I see positive autoimmunity. My titers were 1 in 640. This was the anti-nuclear antibody, the antibody that attacks your nucleus. Your nucleus is the core of who you are. It's at the center of your cells. It's protecting your DNA. And that is what I had antibodies to. I had antibodies. My own body was attacking the very core of who I was. I'm curious who here has discovered ANA or the anti-nuclear antibodies. You can type ANA in the chat if you've had this moment where you look down at the piece of paper and you see autoimmunity and the ANA, anti-nuclear antibodies. So I want to share what happens inside of us, because I want to go over the 3 emotions that our immune system absorbs and really turns into autoimmunity. If you're following along on the worksheet, and we do have a worksheet, I'll have my team be able to put in the link to that worksheet in the chat in case you would like to follow along. I see that there is a comment about multiple sclerosis in the chat. Let me just share on that for a moment while you pull up the worksheet that we have for this masterclass. There are many different forms of autoimmunity. And in fact, I want to share briefly with you Laura's story. Laura was someone who she developed multiple sclerosis. In fact, by her early 20s, she had multiple sclerosis. And yet she also did not think that she had had trauma. She had good parents. Her father was a GI physician. So she also was very confused by her health. But as she did the deeper study that you're doing with this masterclass series, she discovered that she actually had experienced early attachment, overwhelm, or trauma. But let me tell you about Kelsey while we're here. Kelsey grew up with a mother with alcohol issues, and she became the people pleaser. She became the responsible one, invisible, quiet, but taking care of everything. And she developed autoimmunity in her thyroid, Hashimoto's. She also developed some chronic pain, which is very common with this type of childhood experience. And she started her deeper work, not because of these issues, but she started a family and she wanted to protect her kids from this family patterns that she knew that she had absorbed. And so this was her motivation. So there are many different types of autoimmunity. And what experience have you had? If you're a practitioner, you can type in the types of autoimmunity that you've seen in your clients, your patients. If you've personally been diagnosed, what form of autoimmunity have you had? Is it multiple sclerosis? Is it Hashimoto's? Is it diabetes, lupus? Yeah. Rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's. Yeah. There are these many different forms of autoimmunity, and they all have a common root, and we're going to cover that. Let me share with you where you can find this masterclass worksheet. If you click on the link that was in the chat, you are going to scroll down until you see this button here that says Masterclass Worksheet. So when you land on the page, it is the page where you will also be able to purchase ongoing access to this whole masterclass series and get a free copy of my book. You scroll down under day 3, this masterclass here that we are doing right now, Your Path to Emotional and Physical Freedom, and the masterclass worksheet link will be here. And so as we look at what the immune system absorbs, we can see that, like Kelsey, we can have had experiences that created overwhelm inside of us. For her, it was being the responsible one, the invisible one, but the responsible one. And we can look at, did we become the peacemaker, or were we the achiever? In fact, let me show you some of these options and let you see, what do you think were some of your ways of deciding how to survive your family? Every family has its dynamics, right? So type into the chat, which one of these do you feel that you used to survive your childhood? I'm seeing some people saying invisible, achiever. I'm seeing some of you saying all 4, responsible, the peacemaker. And when we think back on the effects that this would have had on us, is it any wonder then that this became our health symptoms? Is it any wonder that this became autoimmunity? It's very predictable. And we look at how we then survived these internal experiences going through life, and would have done one of two things in order to manage the emotions that we were experiencing. And what would have been those emotions? Type into the chat if maybe you remember. Maybe this is so far back, or maybe you've blocked out some of these memories. What were some of the emotions that you would have experienced as a child, or if you're a practitioner, the feelings that your clients and patients would have experienced as a child with needing to become the responsible one, the invisible one, the achiever, the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the one that never had any needs. You were the one that was taking care of everyone else's needs. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of fear, a lot of stress. Imagine that if you think your survival is based on you being perfect, or you managing your parents' emotions, or you protecting your siblings from their anger or their outlashing, whatever it was, that was a lot of pressure. And in fact, it's so much pressure that I'm going to give you a word that might surprise you. We will see. But this is a word that I've studied as I've looked at the nervous system. And it's not just at the level of anxiety. It's not just at the level of feeling scared. It's not even just at the level of feeling fear or afraid. It is at the level of terror. Terror. This is a key emotion at the core of autoimmunity. Terror. We would have felt that our life was in danger. Our life felt in danger. We didn't know if we were going to be okay. We didn't know if things were going to be okay. We didn't know if we were going to be able to do it all, to hold it all. We were doing our best. Absolutely, we're doing our best. But terror is actually the word for the real emotion that starts autoimmunity. And I'm curious, as you now think of that word, what do you think of when you think of your childhood? Do you see moments when you would have felt terror? As a practitioner, sometimes what can happen is that we look back at someone else's life and we're looking at it through the perspective of an adult. And the adult perspective is very different than the child's perspective. As an adult, even for ourselves, we can say, well, it wasn't that bad. Well, others have had it worse. Well, they were doing their best, which may all be true, but it doesn't take away from the fact that as an internal experience when we were young, that is not the maturity and the wisdom and the perspective that we would have had at that time. Instead, at that time, we would have experienced terror. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And hopefully there's some compassion that can come up with that. Compassion for that little child in us that experienced that terror. And that will be part of the repair that we want to do. We do need to repair what was broken. If we don't repair, it remains broken. And what remains broken becomes autoimmunity. What remains broken becomes autoimmunity. And so, how do we then repair? How do we then see what can I even do to reverse autoimmunity? And that's what we want to be able to do. Let me go through one of the questions on your worksheet, which is this question around how long does it actually take for autoimmunity to develop? And maybe I'll ask you that question before I give you the answer. How long do you think that things are building underneath the surface before it actually presents as a disease, as a diagnosis? Decades is the right answer. Yeah. For most autoimmune, it seems to be that 20 years is at least the amount of time for an autoimmune condition to develop. Now, I will say that there are autoimmune conditions that children can experience even younger than that. So this is not everyone. This is the majority of the autoimmune conditions. And I'm curious then, for those of you who have an autoimmune condition and are here, what age were you diagnosed at? Share in the chat, what age were you diagnosed at? I see in your 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s. Isn't this interesting? This is not surprising. Oh, we have a few that were in their childhood. Most, if you're watching the chat, most are in our decades of life. For me, it was 32. It takes time for autoimmunity to develop underneath the surface. And that is why I wanted to share with you on day 1 of our Masterclass series, the ability to detect autoimmunity early. So if I go back to what we were looking at on day 1, day 2, I included the information about fatigue. But on day 1, this was so important for me to include for you. Before the diagnosis, how to detect autoimmunity early through a trauma-informed lens. Because when we can catch it earlier, there's less damage done to our body. It is true that once we get that diagnosis, our body has crossed a line. And it's not impossible at all. And there are many people, including the 2 that I shared with you, both Laura and Kelsey, who've reversed their autoimmunity. They have no symptoms. They are on no medications. I have done the same. My autoimmune numbers are now healthy and normal. I have no sign of autoimmunity in my biology. So it is possible. It's just more work if we're catching it after the diagnosis. And so I want to empower people to know how can they detect it early before it crosses that line. And so whether you have family members or again, you're a practitioner, this would be valuable information for you to go through that particular masterclass again and see how can I share the information so that others are not needing to cross that line and be diagnosed as well. Because it is building underneath the surface for a long time. It doesn't just happen out of the blue. In my book, in chapter 1, I share the story of my patient, Elena. Now, Elena developed her autoimmunity. It was lupus, and she developed it in her 40s, a year after a car accident. Now, many people might think that the car accident might have been the impetus for her autoimmunity. If you think the car accident 1 year prior was the initial stimulation for the development of autoimmunity, go ahead and type that into the chat. If you think that was not, type no. I'm seeing a lot of no's in the chat. You would be correct. But what we need to understand is that the stress in our life can be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. It was not the original stimulus. And when we looked at her life, we again went back to her childhood. And guess what emotion that we found in her childhood? Type that emotion into the chat. We just covered that emotion. We discovered the terror that she experienced in her childhood. That is when it first started to form a biology of trauma. And then the car accident and the situation that she was now divorced and a single mom and trying to be an executive in her corporate position. And so it was a lot of responsibility. And so when she had that car accident, it was a trigger for her to go into overwhelm. And that then was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm curious, do any of you resonate with Elena's story? You'll read it in the book. It's chapter 1. It's how I start the book, is you will be right in the middle of this car accident with Elena. Was there an event in your life that you can look at that was the final straw that broke the camel's back? It wasn't necessarily the original stimulation for the autoimmune process, the biology of trauma. The biology of trauma would have started decades ago, but there might have been that final straw. I'm seeing for some of you, you're saying a divorce. I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat. I'm seeing diagnosed after my dad died. And for those of you who are resonating with that, I'd be very curious to lean into, why was the death of your father something that re-triggered that sense of, I don't know if I'm going to be okay? For me, it was breaking my collarbone. And while you might think that that would be a silly thing to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, it was significant for me because movement was my whole career. I was in surgery residency at that time. And so for me, breaking my collarbone meant that I could not actually be productive. I could not be helpful. I could not be valuable. I now became a burden on other people. And for me, that went back to my childhood, that I could not be a burden on anyone else and be okay. It triggered so much, but I didn't know how to process those feelings. And so now I'm going to share with you the 2 things that I mentioned, the 2 strategies that we use starting in childhood that lead and contribute to autoimmunity. If you're ready for those 2 survival strategies, go ahead and type ready in the chat. Then I'll share my screen and show you the 2 strategies, because this is what I was doing. What I was doing was I was both suppressing and repressing. Suppressing and repressing. What are the difference between them? Suppressing is where we are aware that we have emotions that we don't want to feel, and we are consciously suppressing those feelings. So for example, if at a time when I was experiencing the anxiety around not being able to be productive and work, I was aware of some of that anxiety, and I was consciously using food to numb those feelings. I was consciously using movies and binge watching movies in order to not be feeling those feelings. There was some degree of awareness. So if you feel that this has been part of your story to suppress, you've been aware and you've suppressed that, suppressed different emotions. Go ahead and share that in the chat. Just type suppress if that's been one of your survival strategies over the years. This is what I also did as a child. So as a child, what I would do is I would go and I would hide in a corner. I would hide in the farthest corner of the house. And guess what I would take with me? For me, I would take a book. I would take a book that would be a story that would take me into a different world. I didn't like being in the world that I was in. I didn't like my reality. And so I would use books to take me into a different reality. I was aware of what I was doing. Of course, I didn't have all of the wisdom and perspective that I do now to understand, wow, if that's what little Aimie had to do to help her survive, she was feeling a lot of terror. Those were such big emotions for her that she had to find a way to not feel them at times and to escape into someone else's story because she didn't like her own story. That is suppression. Suppression becomes autoimmunity. Suppression becomes autoimmunity. But that's not the only way that we can cope with terror and overwhelming emotions. The other way is repression. Repression is different than suppression. Repression is where we don't know that we're actually blocking feelings. We have packed it so far down that we are not even aware. This is the challenge, because if we're not aware, how do we even do something about it? And this, my friends, is some of what causes the most damage to our body and the greatest degree of a biology of trauma. And of course, the challenge is that if you're repressing it, you don't even know that you're repressing it, because it's not even at the conscious level. Now, I can look back and I can see times of my life where I was not aware and I was repressing emotions, sadness, grief. And I was doing it in such a way that I did not know. I did not know at that time. Yes, Dr. Mate mentioned these in that masterclass on day 1, suppression and repression. And as a physician, I can see that it's the repression that creates the greater degree of biology of trauma. Suppression is not healthy either. That's also going to create a biology of trauma. But what we don't know that we're stuffing down is more dangerous than what we know we're stuffing down. And this is why I wanted to share this masterclass series with you. Because when you know these emotional roots behind autoimmunity, it comes to that level of conscious awareness, and it starts to decrease the damage that it has on your body, because it's now no longer in the category of repression. There's lots of work to do, and there is no overnight fix. And I'm not going to give you a magic pill to try to convince you that it's simple or easy. But I do know that the first step to decreasing the impact on your autoimmunity is to show you some of these emotional roots. Then you'll get to decide if you want to take action. But the first step to reducing the damage, decreasing the acceleration and the compounded effect of a biology of trauma and autoimmunity, is getting these things out of the category of repression. So as you look back at your life, or maybe even just over the last 3 days, and the insights that you had from Gabor Mate's masterclass, the masterclass with Dick Schwartz on parts, what can you see that perhaps, maybe, you might have been repressing emotions from past experiences that you didn't even know? I'm noticing someone in the chat mentioned to me this idea of secrets. Sometimes Some of us grew up in families where there were family secrets. There were things that we could not talk about with anyone else outside of the family or to the other members of the family. They were just the unspoken things, maybe things that you were seeing, things that were happening. They had to remain secrets for your family to stay together, for you to be okay. And so you made an internal contract with yourself that you would agree to silence in order to help survive your childhood. That becomes autoimmunity. That becomes this suppression and this repression that drives a biology of trauma. Oh, I know that this is a bit heavy, so let's just pause here. Many of you know that I teach somatic self-practices, so I'm going to just move into a containment hug, which is basically a form of self-hug. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to slip my hand behind my neck. This is the neck. The neck. Let me do a little bit of teaching about the neck. The neck is actually one of the central features of our anatomy that is connected with our attachment and our early life. So whenever you want to connect with a young part of yourself or that young child that you've now recognized had some feelings, had some emotions, maybe had that level of terror, you can bring some contact behind your neck and you can start to provide that sense of safety and support that will reach to the level of your attachment. How interesting. And as I do that, I get a deep breath. That's how I know that my body is responding to my support, to my touch. I will say that for many of you here, if you are following along with me, you will not feel anything and you will have no idea what I'm talking about. And that, my friend, is a sign of how much you have had to repress and suppress over the years. That your body is now numb. You don't feel things in your body like would be normal. This is a sign of how much trauma is stored in your body. The more numb you feel. I remember feeling numb. I remember feeling numb in 2014. I felt flat. I felt emotionally flat. As a physician and in the surgery residency program, I worked with a lot of patients in the ICU, the critical units. And I would go in and I would look at the monitors. I'm sure you've all seen those monitors, the heart monitors where it shows the beating of the heart. You do not want a flat line. A flat line is the loss of life. But that's how I felt inside. I felt emotionally flatlined. I felt like I had lost my life. I had lost my joy. I had lost my sense of connection and aliveness. That's how I felt. So for me, this was my journey to coming out of numbness. And this may not be the best support for you. And so you may want to have your hand somewhere else. You may want to just do a self-containment hug. You may want to not do any of that. You may want to just put a pillow over your belly or put a pillow under your shoulders and bring some support in. There's lots of ways that we can come in and we can provide this support for our body and help it process what we're learning. Because this is deep stuff. And I don't want your body to be feeling alone as it's trying to process all this, because likely there will be memories that may be triggered, feelings that may surface just as I talk about them. In fact, you may be the opposite of numb. You may feel, no, I am not numb. I feel too much. And if this is you, type that into the chat. If you're the one that feels too much, type too much. If you're the one that feels numb, you can type numb into the chat. Either way, this is a sign of how much trauma is stored in our body. And as we are looking at wrapping up, I want to go through what else is on our worksheet. We've talked about how long it takes for autoimmunity to actually develop. We've talked about emotions that the immune system absorbs, the terror especially that it absorbs, and it becomes an autoimmune process. An autoimmune process is the development of a disease, but it's not yet there. It's the process that develops into the disease. We've talked about how trauma is not the event. And we've talked about really how our autoimmunity, the immune system, our autoimmunity is a window into our life. Our immune system has absorbed every experience that we've had, and it holds these experiences of fear and terror, sometimes through suppression, other times through repression. But our immune system, our autoimmunity is not random. It's a window into our life. If that resonates with you, type window into the chat. Our immune system, our autoimmunity is a window into our past. Why would we want to look at our past? It is not to wallow in the past. It is not to go into those stories and say, oh, look at the terrible things that I felt. Look at the terrible things that I experienced. It's so that we can be strategic about the repair. We can be strategic about the repair. One of the windows into our past that I want to highlight for you is this idea that our autoimmunity is a rejection of ourselves. With the idea that if I reject myself, then others won't have a chance to reject me. I won't feel the pain of their rejection as much if I have rejected myself first. And that's sometimes what we try to do. We actually have tried to reject ourselves first. We've tried to abandon ourselves first before other people will. This is part of the window into our autoimmunity. Now, what I want to be clear is that autoimmunity lands squarely in that dorsal vagal trauma response, or the freeze and overwhelm. And let me show you what that means. Again, this will be information that you will see in the masterclass on day two masterclass on the connection between attachment, fatigue, and autoimmunity is where I would have covered the steps that our body takes into the trauma response. So you will want to go back and watch that one specifically if this is new to you and you don't know what I'm talking about. We have a trauma response. It goes through the stress response, but it is not just stress. Stress and trauma are different. You'll want to watch that masterclass on day 2 to really understand the difference. And autoimmunity is a window that we have been living in a dorsal vagal response. A shutdown, breakdown, a burnout. That is what autoimmunity is. Autoimmunity is a breakdown. Autoimmunity is a shutting down of the processes that should be controlling and stopping autoimmunity, but it's not. So things are breaking down. And because we know that this is the science of autoimmunity, that it represents a biology of trauma that has kept us now stuck in this freeze, overwhelm, burnout, and breakdown place, we have our path out. And this is what I want to share with you. And again, this is in the masterclass on day 2. We are going to want to follow this white line all the way out. We need to find our way back home to ourselves, which is here in calm aliveness. And there is a way to do that. There is a structured sequence. It starts with creating safety for this aspect of our body to come out. Then we will need to create support. This is both somatic support, but it's also biology support. This is the ability to actually have a good stress response and complete a stress response. And we need support and resources to be able to do that. But the problem is that we don't have that because we've been here in the breakdown phase for too long. It's just been too little for too long and too much too fast. So this is our roadmap out. Our roadmap out says we have to provide safety first. We need to bring in energy into the system. So we will need to do the biology repair. We'll need to do the somatic repair, the level at the parts work, and that working with the young child part of us. And then we can start to work with actually the activation and the stress and being able to stop that from going back into burnout and breakdown. We need to stop that cycle, because right now what's happening is that we always feel a sense of danger, and we never feel like we have enough to meet that danger. And as long as we stay in the gap, we are going to stay in that place of breakdown internally, and our biology will contribute and accumulate the damage going into the autoimmunity. So this is the path that I am sharing with you for the way to repair autoimmunity that is possible to reverse and to not have symptoms and decrease the damage to our body. It absolutely is possible. Now, what I want to share with you is that I know that many of you, I've been seeing in the chat, many of you missed some of these critical masterclasses in the masterclass. In the masterclass series on Monday and Tuesday, you missed some of these and you're realizing, shoot, I need to go back and I need to watch them. But they were available for 24 hours. And so we are now on day 3. So this is why I've put together a way for you to have ongoing access to this whole masterclass series so that you can have more time with it and you get to keep it all and own it all. Keep it all and own it all. Let me go through what all that will include so that you know what you would be resourcing yourself with. This was the 3-part masterclass series, all on the hidden story of autoimmunity. You get to own it all. And I am going to send you a hardcover copy of my book on the biology of trauma. It's right here behind me. The book, Biology of Trauma. As soon as it comes out in September 23, I will send you a copy when you purchase the ongoing access for this masterclass series. Now, along with that, because we are in this phase, this window where it is the pre-order of the book comes out on September 23, what I will also be doing is giving you a number of bonuses that are all part of the pre-order bonuses. But let me go through with the ongoing access. You'll be able to rewatch the sessions whenever you want. You'll be able to pause, rewind, absorb at your own pace. Give yourself the gift of time. Keep this resource for yourself, your own personal healing library. I also am including a guided journal. Now, this is not something that I had in here originally, but as I was watching all the comments come through, I realized that this is something that I would want to give you. So for those of you who will be purchasing ongoing access of this, each day, I've created a journal prompt for you to go through. So this is it. You can see all the questions that I have asked you here for you to be able to reflect and find more insights into the window of your life. For example, here, when my autoimmune symptoms flare, I notice this childhood pattern becomes more intense, completely unconscious, my only coping strategy, a source of shame. When I act authentically, This is how my body feels. When I act inauthentically against my true needs and feelings, this is how my body feels. And I notice my autoimmune symptoms are most active when or after I am doing this. So I've put together these journal questions for you to be able to have deeper insights into your life, your experiences, or if you're a practitioner, you can use these questions, those that you help with your clients, with your patients, so that you are having all of these deep insights about the deeper biology of trauma and the hidden emotional roots. Going back to the purchasing the Masterclass series, if this would be helpful to you, I have said that you will get a free copy of my Biology of Trauma book, and that is an actual hardcover copy, not a PDF, not sending you a digital version. You get the real deal, a hard copy. So this is what you'll be able to keep. The 2 masterclasses on day 1, Masterclass with Gabor Mate, Masterclass with me, Masterclass with Dr. Dick Schwartz, Masterclass on the attachment, fatigue, and autoimmunity. This is where we go over that freeze response, the body's trauma response. And then the Masterclass from today, you'll be able to keep ongoing access to that as well. All of this is just for $34. The reason for that is that $34 is the cost that it takes for me to ship you the book. So I'm not earning any money on this. This is just to cover the cost of shipping you the book. And so $34, you get all of this, and you will get the bonuses at this time that are associated with pre-ordering the book. So I will send you chapters 1 through 3 of the book, for example. You will get the Insider's Circle. You will get the Biology of Trauma book Masterclass, where I go through the concepts laid out in the book. And you'll get access to my 5-day nervous system reset. So all of this is what you will get. Again, all I'm asking is that you actually cover the cost of the book itself and what it will cost me to buy it for you and ship it to you. And for me, that is $34. You are able to purchase the book on Amazon. It would cost you less. You just also then wouldn't get the Masterclass series. But that would be fine. If you just want the book, you can go to Amazon and purchase the book. I also just wanted to give you the opportunity to have ongoing access to all of this information about the emotional roots of autoimmunity, if this would be helpful to you. With that, I would love to be able to wrap up and see, what did you learn today? What did you learn? What was something that you learned about yourself today? Was it around the childhood patterns, being the invisible one, the responsible one? Would you be saying that you learned that there's hope? Yeah. My team can drop the link to order that again. I see that we have. Well, I know that the chat is going pretty fast, so we'll send that to everyone else. Everyone again. This is how you get ongoing access. When you log into your platform, the link will also be there on the side for you. Yeah. Many of you are mentioning that autoimmune is rejecting yourself. Many of you are mentioning this aspect of terror. You hadn't realized that we're not talking about you just felt scared or you just felt afraid. Terror. Ooh, I'm seeing some people saying that they're going to go ask their physician for an ANA test. Yes, please. One of the important labs that you will want to do. Yeah. The guided journal will be inside of the Masterclass series. So once you purchase that, you'll be able to access that journal. That journal will be for those who purchase the ongoing access. I do need a US-based address for the book. So if you have anyone who lives in the United States, then you can do that. If you don't have that, then we can figure out some other way for it to be a US-based address for me, because that's what the $34 will cover. $34 will not cover the international shipping for me, but we can figure something out. But if at all possible, if you have a friend or a family member who does have a US address, that is what I need on the forms. Yeah. If you are, I see a few of you asking that question. We can figure it out. So you can reply to my email today for the Masterclass series, and we can certainly help you, have you purchase it on Amazon and be able to have a separate payment for this ongoing access. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for your time today. This is such an important topic for me, given my own experience with autoimmunity, that this meant a lot for me to be able to put together this Masterclass series. Some of you are asking, can we gift this offer to others? Absolutely. Yes, you can purchase it for someone else, and then they would put their email information for the login, and that would be a wonderful gift for those in your life who may have autoimmunity or be at risk of autoimmunity given their past life experiences in their childhood. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, with that, I will be sending you more information. I see some other questions coming in about things a little outside of the scope of this masterclass, but you will find that I do frequent masterclasses. And so that will be a time that we can go over some of these other very interesting things on the nervous system, on the body, on autoimmunity, the vagus nerve. There is so much depth here. So I'm so glad that you have been here, that our paths have crossed. And what I will do is I will be putting the recording, the replay for this masterclass on your platform for the Masterclass series in just a few hours, as soon as we can process that. And then you'll be able to rewatch this. You'll have until midnight. At midnight, everything does close. And so if you want ongoing access, you will need to purchase that today before midnight Pacific. With that, thank you so much and have a very wonderful rest of your day.